Well, it was interesting for me to hear the stories of some of you who knew you wanted to be a lawyer when you were a very young age. That didn't happen with me. When I heard that I had received this award, first, I checked to see that it wasn't April Fool's Day. It was on my cell phone, and then I was told that I was nominated by my children and my son-in-law, and I thought that makes sense because I can't think of another lawyer or judge who would nominate me for this thing. And then I didn't tell my wife and children for about a week because I was still digesting the fact that I was getting an award. I hadn't received an award since I won the batting championship in 1958 at Shorehead High School. So that gives you some idea how long we're talking about. And one of my daughters, or both of my daughters, suggested, why don't you speak about why you became a lawyer? We don't have time for that. That would take a long time. Unlike some of the other people here, it was not my lifetime dream. And I was trying to think back, like when did law first come into my consciousness? And I thought back to an incident at Lee Street School. I went to Lee Street School on 9th and Meineke. I was in first grade, and I had kind of a loud voice, a deep voice for a child. And apparently I interrupted the class, and the teacher said, would you please stand up? And I did, and she said, how would you like to go to the principal's office? And I said, I'd like to consult with my attorney. And I remember this because I remember her reaction. I have no idea where that came from. I think it may have come, in those days, we didn't have a television, it was probably from some kind of a radio show. But I didn't think about law again until 1963 when I graduated from Madison. I was an undergraduate major in history. I had gravitated to that because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and when I first started, I just put the word pre-med in, and I never liked science, and then I came face to face with chemistry and knew I had to go into the social sciences. So I became a history major. 1963 was a time of both the civil rights and the war in Vietnam. It was starting up. So like many others of my generation, I had to make some kind of a decision. I mean, the last thing in the world I wanted to do was get drafted. So I took the LSAT test, but I also took the graduate records exam. For some reason, I gravitated to graduate school, and I went to graduate school in history and then transferred to sociology. And then after finishing my master's degree, I thought, you're 24 years old, you could be drafted, but you need to get out and make some money. So I decided I would try teaching college. In those days, you could teach with a master's degree. There was a shortage. And I had three job offers. One was in the Wisconsin system, and another one was in New York State. But the third one was in Houston, Texas, at Texas Southern University. And that's the one I selected. Texas Southern was a historically black college, and frankly, I felt I could learn more by being in an environment that was different than the one I had been raised in. I was very fortunate. My parents owned a home in Shorewood. I basically went to a college preparatory school. So I taught there for a couple of years, and it taught me how much I enjoyed dealing with people who had backgrounds different than my own on a real human level. But the other thing is I also met my future wife there in Texas. She has told me I could tell a little bit of the story because it is a little bit unique. On the one hand, it has nothing to do with law, but on the other hand, it does. We met in 1966. She was an exchange student at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas, and I had taken Spanish in high school, and I wasn't really interested in the language, but I always liked the way these women looked, you know. So, that's kind of stuck in my mind, and I met her at a party just by chance. I kind of chased her back to Austin. She was a student leader from the University of Chile, and I chased her back to Austin, and I was living in Houston. It's 180 miles away. So every weekend, she was only there for a couple of months, but so she went back, and I'm still teaching, and I'm thinking, gee, I think I'd like to go down and visit her in Chile. And I had a teaching job at the University of Wisconsin in the philosophy department that summer. So I did go and I visited her. Well, I had asked her to marry me while she was still here. She thought I was crazy probably, but I did visit her there, and I spent 13 days there, and then I came back. And then I had to make this choice. I taught another year at Texas Southern. Now I'm 26. I don't have to worry about the draft, but I have to worry about what I'm going to do with my life. And that law came in at that point. I made a decision rather than get a doctorate degree, I was going to law school. And I had been in Madison for 6 years, so I was accepted there, but I applied at the University of Texas, which is a huge law school, and I got accepted there. And I hate to tell you this, but the tuition was $100 a semester. They had oil well. So and then I had applied somewhere out east, I can't remember, but it was $2,000 a semester, which now doesn't seem like a lot, but then seemed like a lot. So I'm thinking $100, $2,000. So I stayed there and got for my law degree. But I corresponded with my future wife for about a year, and one day got what I call the Dear Joel letter, which I can't blame her for. You know, after all, Milwaukee is 5,425 miles from Santiago, Chile. That's a long distance, and I thought, you know, what am I going to do? So I kept writing to her, and I never heard anything, and I thought, and this is important because this is the concept of choice and perseverance. I kept writing to her, and I never heard anything for like months. And on my birthday, a letter came basically saying, you know, I wish you well and everything like that, and then nothing. I had a job in Washington, D.C., and I came back to Milwaukee to visit my parents. My mother said to me, gee, you seem kind of restless. And I was, because I was contemplating, what am I going to do? So I decided that I was going to Chile without telling her. And I didn't have a lot of money, but I had a little red MG that I bought when I was teaching at Texas Southern. I drove it down to Houston. I drove it into a dealership. I sold it. I took the money. I spent $572 and bought a ticket to Chile. Sent her a telegram telling her when I was going to arrive, and got on the plane and arrived there, and no one was there, and I don't speak Spanish. So I'm standing there, and about a half hour later, I hear over the loudspeaker at the airport, Senor Rosenthal. That was obviously me. And a little later, I see two people walking toward me. One of them is Liliana, and the other one's her brother. And she says, what are you doing here? Well, we hadn't seen one another in a couple of years now. I said, I came to get married. She says, I can't marry you. I'm dating someone else. So I said, well, I just sold my car. I'm not going back to Milwaukee. I'm going to stay here for a while. To make a long story short, we were married the following summer in Washington, D.C. So this may be a Lifetime Achievement Award, but that was my first Lifetime Achievement Award. We went back to so we were married that summer. It was between our second and third year in law school. And I'll never forget this. And I was 28 now at that time, and I had a teacher that was maybe 2 years older than I was. And I'm sitting in this class, and you know how law professors are at times. As a lawyer, you'd have to learn how to persevere. You know, you guys have no life experiences, you know, you're going to learn the hard way by making mistakes and persevering. I'm thinking, I just went through hell. You know, you got to be kidding. So Liliana, having been from another country and having given up, you know, her family and everything, insisted that we come back to Milwaukee. And that's how we ended up back here. And since I had majored in history and sociology and took every impractical course I could find in law school, I had to take the bar. And at that time, I was told by the bar, there's no course, you just have to rent these materials. So I rent these materials, and they give you a list. There's 25 subjects. The bar is 3 weeks away, and I look at them, and I've only taken courses on 10 of the 30. I've got books for each one, so I got 1 day each to study. So somehow I passed that and got a job in the criminal field. That was the first job I had at the Children's Court Center. So I had 6 months of experience, and Mike McCann, who was the district attorney, and there was a lot of turnover in the office at that time, thought I was experienced and offered me a job, and I spent I signed a 3-year contract, and I spent 3 years with the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, which was an incredible experience for me, because at that time, I think I was sharing with Mike Skarowski, who was in the office at that time and with whom I worked. I think I was the 28th person. So it was a small office. So in 3 years' time, I tried homicides, I conducted a John Doe proceeding, I did white-collar work, I did just all sorts of things. It's harder now because of the size. So I had all this incredible experience that I really enjoyed, and when I left, I joined a real estate firm. That didn't last very long. Then I joined a labor law firm. Mike was there already. We had practiced together at the district attorney's office. And I don't think anybody is here from this firm, but I'll never forget I had no experience with like making money and how all the economics of it. One of the partners said to me one day, I love to give. I'll never forget that. I love to give. Giving makes me feel good. And all this, and the implication was I could make a lot of money. And I listened to this, and I said, well, you know, that's really good, because I like to receive. And I said, with your need to give and my need to receive, we're going to get along just fine. 12 months later, I gave notice and started a law firm with my good friend Gary Luck, who was also a member of that firm. About a week after we did that, and we had 1 client and 6 children. And I know it wasn't rational now that I look back, but we did do it. And I think it was about a month afterward, another partner in that firm ran into me and said, there's no way you're going to last. You're not tough enough, you know, to do this. I hadn't told him the story about how I got married. And, Gary and I formed a law firm called Luck and Rosenthal. The name was determined by the flip of a coin because it didn't matter to us. And we practiced together from 1977 to 2012. Much of it was in the criminal field, but not exclusively. But there was a lot of personal enjoyment and personal satisfaction from doing it. I got the same satisfaction that I had gotten when I had taught at Texas Southern. Anyone who's done criminal work knows it's not easy. It's difficult, you know. The cases can be difficult, the people can be difficult, but then there are also a lot of ordinary people that get caught up in the system and that you try to help. But the one thing I have learned, because I've been asked many times, you know, you've practiced for so many years, 47 years, you must have some wisdom. not really, but the one thing I learned was to be a better listener and listen to people. And when you listen to people, you get to know their stories, just like I related a little bit of my story, which even some of the people here that I've known for years, I never told this story to. So depending on the circumstances and the audience, there are people with stories, and that's how we relate to one another. I've continued on afterward. I haven't done it alone. I've done it with help from other colleagues, with my family, my children, my good friends. Bill Cole, who's been an investigator for me for many, many years. I'm always asked, when are you going to retire? And my flippant answer is, to me, retiring is changing tires on my car. But the more serious answer is, when I don't have anything to give, when I don't have anything to get out of it. And the other reason is I've got to be in court at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you.